My name is Caroline Brooks. I am 62 years old, and my life split into a before and an after the day my daughter was born. Before that day, I thought I knew what kind of woman I was going to be. I thought I knew what kind of mother I would be, and what kind of father my husband would be. We had a picture in our heads: the house, the nursery, the tiny perfect baby in the crib, the proud husband holding a pink wrapped bundle like some movie scene. Reality didn't look anything like that. I went into labor on a rainy Thursday. The drive to the hospital was a blur of wiper blades and contractions that felt like somebody was trying to turn my insides inside out. Marcus, my husband, kept saying, "Breathe, baby, just breathe." Like that was going to make anything hurt less. I remember the smell of antiseptic, the white tiles, the bright lights that made everything feel too sharp. I remember a nurse with kind eyes putting a hand on my arm and telling me I was doing great, when I felt anything but. And then I remember the silence. People don't talk about how loud birth is. The machines, the voices, the instructions. But when my daughter came into the world, it felt like the whole room inhaled and forgot how to exhale. No one said congratulations. No one said she's beautiful. Someone said, "Doctor?" in a voice that made my skin go cold. I didn't get to hold her right away. They took her to a table under a heat lamp and the doctor leaned over her, his face changing in a way I didn't understand yet. The nurse's kind eyes flicked toward me and away again, like I was something she couldn't look at for long. "Is something wrong?" I asked. My voice came out shaky. "What's wrong with my baby?" They spoke in the language of medicine. Low tone. "Features will run tests, it appears." Words that built a wall between me and the truth. Finally, the doctor came over and pulled his mask down. "Mrs. Brooks," he said gently, "we believe your daughter has Down syndrome. We'll need to confirm with genetic testing, but the signs are there." I didn't take it in at first. Down syndrome was something I had seen in pamphlets and on charity commercials. It was a word that lived far away from my life. "That means what exactly?" I asked. He started explaining diagnoses and developmental delays, risks and therapies, all these careful, clinical phrases that sounded like they belonged in a textbook, not in the little blanket-trapped body across the room. Marcus just stood there. He didn't ask a single question. He didn't move toward our baby. He just stared at her like she was a stranger who had broken into our lives. When they finally placed her in my arms, all the noise in my head went quiet. Her eyes were a little almond-shaped. Her nose was small. Her fingers curled around my thumb with surprising strength. She had the softest fuzz of hair on her head and the kind of serious expression that made her look like she was judging the whole world already. "Hi," I whispered. "Hi, baby." She blinked up at me. That was it. I was done. Whatever the doctor had said, whatever the future held, this was my child. I looked at Marcus, expecting to see the same awe, the same ridiculous, overwhelming love. Instead, I saw fear. And something worse than fear: rejection. He took a step back. She doesn't look right," he said quietly, like he was afraid the baby might understand him. "Care? What did they do?" "No one did anything," I said, holding her closer. "She's our daughter. Her name is Grace." He flinched when I said it. "Don't name her yet." The doctor pretended not to hear that, but I saw his jaw tighten later, when the nurses had left and the visitors' hours were over, and the machines were the only things keeping us company. Marcus finally let whatever was inside him spill out. "I can't do this," he said. He was standing by the window, looking at the parking lot lights instead of at me. "I can't raise a child like that." I felt like he'd slapped me. "A child like what?" I asked. He ran his hands over his face. "You heard what the doctor said. Delays, heart problems, therapy forever. She might never live on her own. We had a plan, Care. We had a life. We still have a life," I said. "It just looks different." "No," he said. "You don't get it. Everything changes. My job, our finances, our time, everything. People talk, too. You know how this town is. Pity, whispers, all of that." I stared at him. "You're worried about what people will say?" I asked. "Our daughter is in that plastic box, and all you can think about is how it looks?" She's not what we expected," he said helplessly. "She's not a product you send back," I snapped. "She's our baby." He looked at me then, really looked at me. "The hospital gave me some information," he said slowly. "About options." My stomach dropped. "What options?" "There are facilities," he said. "Homes, places specialized for kids like her. We could sign her over." They said sometimes that's what's best for the child and the family. I remember the way the fluorescent light hummed. I remember the weight of Grace in my arms, the warmth of her small body pressed against mine. I remember the feeling in my chest, a mix of grief and fury so strong it made my vision swim. "Are you saying we should give her away?" I asked. "I'm saying we're not prepared for this," he said. "We're not doctors. We don't have money for specialists. We don't know anything about disability. We could have another baby. A healthy one. We don't have to. Don't say another baby like she's a broken thing off an assembly line, I cut in. She is healthy. She just has Down syndrome. She is still ours. She is still mine. He shook his head. We can't live like this, he said. I can't. I looked at him, this man I'd loved since I was 20. The man I thought I knew inside out. The father I had pictured holding tiny hands and teaching someone to ride a bike. I can, I said. I can live like this. I can be her mother. He went very still. So what? He asked slowly. You're choosing her over me. I held Grace closer. She made a little sound in her sleep. A soft sigh. I'm not choosing between you, I said. I'm being clear. I won't put her in some home so we can pretend we never had her. If you want to leave, that's your choice. But I'm not abandoning my child. He stared at us a long moment. Something ugly and hurt and selfish warring across his face. Then he picked up his jacket. I can't do this, he repeated. And walked out of the room just like that. He didn't come back the next day. Or the next. He called once, a short, clipped conversation, where he sounded like he was talking to a coworker. Have you signed the papers? He asked. No, I said. Then I don't know what else to say, he replied and hung up. When the nurse came in and saw my face, she didn't pretend not to notice. She sat on the edge of the bed and listened as I told her everything in broken pieces. Do you know why they gave him that information? She asked when I was done. Why? I whispered. Because some parents choose that, she said calmly. Some people decide they can't do it and they sign the baby over. Sometimes it's because they truly don't have the capacity. Sometimes it's because they're cowards. I can't tell you which your husband is, but I can tell you this, your daughter is not a tragedy. She's a person. And she's going to need somebody willing to show up for her. I looked down at Grace. I can show up, I said. And I did. Those first years were hard. I'm not going to pretend they weren't. There were appointments and evaluations and a stack of paperwork. That seemed to regenerate overnight. There were moments when I cried in the bathroom with the water running so Grace wouldn't hear me. There were also first laughs. First steps that came later than the book said they should, but felt just as miraculous when they happened. First words that were a little unclear but full of meaning. She had big feelings. When she was happy, she lit up a room. When she was frustrated, the whole neighborhood knew it. She loved music, hated broccoli, and had an obsession with sparkly shoes that I never quite understood. We learned sign language together to support her speech. We made picture schedules with Velcro and laminated cards. We practiced crossing the street 100 times, hand in hand. People stared sometimes. Kids on the playground would ask why she looked different. I answered their questions calmly. And she answered them in her own way by laughing, playing. Existing right in front of them. Marcus sent money for a while. Child support in envelopes that smelled like his aftershave. No letters. No birthday cards. Just checks with his name printed neat in the corner. Then even those stopped. We got by. I picked up extra shifts at the grocery store. My sister helped when she could. I learned how to stretch a pot of soup 3 days. Grace didn't know she was different until school tried to tell her. The first time she came home from 3rd grade quiet instead of talking nonstop, I knew something had happened. What's wrong, baby? I asked. She fiddled with the straps of her backpack. Some girls said I'm slow, she mumbled. They said I shouldn't be in their class. They said I'm broken. The word hit me like a thrown rock. Who told you that word? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. They did, she said. At recess. They said their moms told them kids like me belong in this special building. They said their mom said it's sad you kept me for a second. I saw Marcus in the hospital room again, saying we could have another baby. A healthy one. I took a breath. Come here, I said, pulling her close. You listen to me very carefully. You are not broken. Your brain works differently. Your body works differently. That's true. But different and broken are not the same thing. She looked up at me, eyes wet. Then why don't they want to play with me? She whispered. Because they're ignorant, I said. And because their parents are afraid of anything that doesn't fit in their little box. That's their problem. Not yours. I went to the school the next day. There were meetings, polite words, promises of sensitivity training. Some things improved. Some didn't. The world is slow to change. Grace kept going anyway. She joined a drama group. Because of course she did. She loved being on stage. Loved pretending to be other people while staying fully herself. She worked at a coffee shop with a supported employment program when she got older. She took longer to learn the register, but once she did, she remembered every regular's order better than the manager. She was 21 when she told me she wanted to move into a shared apartment with 2 other girls from her program. I want my own place. Mom, she said firmly, I love you, but I don't want to be your little girl forever. I want to be a woman. I want to cook my own spaghetti and have my own key. I won't lie. My heart squeezed so tight I had to sit down. But I had spent decades telling everyone that my daughter deserved a life, not just a diagnosis. I wasn't about to become the person holding her back. We found a supported living situation with staff on site. We practiced taking the bus. We made emergency plans. I labeled everything in her kitchen with big, clear words the day she moved in. She hugged me at the door. "I'm not leaving you," she said, like she had read my mind. "I'm just growing." She visited on Sundays. We had our routines: church, lunch, folding laundry together like we'd done when she was little. Sometimes she talked about a boy from her drama group with a look on her face that made me both proud and terrified. Life settled into a rhythm. Marcus remained a ghost. I saw his name once, years later in the paper. Something about a promotion at a company in the city. There was a picture of him in a suit, looking older, broader in the shoulders, standing with a woman who was not me and a boy around 10. I cut the article out, not to keep, to remind myself of something. He had gone on to build a whole other life, one in which our daughter did not exist. He never called on her birthdays, never asked how her heart appointments went, never sat in the audience and watched her play a tree in the background of a community theater production with more pride than most parents reserve for starring roles for a long time. I thought that was the end of it. Some fathers leave and never look back. 23 years after Grace was born, my phone rang on a Tuesday afternoon. The number was unfamiliar, from the city. I almost didn't pick up. I was tired from work, halfway through chopping onions, my hands smelling like dinner. "Hello?" I answered, tucking the phone between my ear and shoulder. "Is this Caroline Brooks?" A man's voice asked. "That depends who's asking," I said cautiously. There was a pause on the line. "It's Marcus," he said. For a moment, the kitchen dissolved. I was back in the hospital room, back in that terrible silence, back at the window where he stood with his back to us. "What do you want?" I asked. My voice sounded older, harder than the last time I'd spoken his name. He cleared his throat. I need to talk to you about something," he said. "About Grace." My grip on the knife tightened. "What do you know about Grace?" I asked. "You walked out before you learned anything." "I know," he said quickly. "I know. I've thought about that day every single day." "Don't," I cut in. "Don't you start with 'I think about it every day' like that makes any difference now. You didn't think about her on birthdays. You didn't think about her at surgeries. You didn't think about her when kids called her names at school. You thought about her when it was convenient for you to feel guilty." He was silent for a long moment. "I deserve that," he said finally. "But please, just listen." I almost hung up. I really did. Then I thought of Grace. I thought of how she always wanted to know where she came from, even when I kept my answers simple. "I'm listening," I said. "You have 30 seconds before I decide if this conversation continues." He took a breath. I'm sick," he said. "It's my kidneys. They're failing. I'm on the transplant list, but they say it could take years. I don't have. My wife got tested. My son got tested. No one is a match." The room went very still. "And?" I asked, though I already knew where this was going, and the doctor said, "Biological children are often the best hope," he said. He asked if I had any others. I told him about Grace. I closed my eyes. "There it is," I said. "There's a reason you suddenly remembered her name." "I know how it sounds," he said quickly. "But I'm not asking for anything yet. I thought maybe if she was willing to get tested, if she wanted to help." He let the sentence trail off as if he didn't quite dare to finish it. "You want my daughter," I said slowly. "The same daughter you tried to sign away. The same daughter you couldn't even hold when she was born. To save your life." He made a choking sound. "Caroline, please," he said. "I have a wife. I have a son who still needs his father. I'm not asking you to force her. I swear, I just want a chance to talk to her. To explain. To apologize." Something in me wanted to scream at him until my throat gave out. Another part wanted to slam the phone down and never speak to him again. But there was another voice inside to dot. It was the voice I'd heard from the day Grace was born. The one that always asked, "What is best for her?" Not for my anger. Not for my pride. For her life, her story, her sense of herself. "She's not a spare part," I said. "She's a person." "I know," he whispered. "I know that now. I should have known then. Please, let me talk to her. If she says no, I'll accept it. I'll die with it. But I can't go to my grave without at least asking her myself." I hated him in that moment for putting this decision in my hands, for forcing me to be the gate between him and the daughter he'd thrown away. "Grace is not a child anymore," I said. "She's 23. This is not my decision to make. It's hers. But I need you to understand something." "What?" he asked. "If I let you talk to her," I said, "you will not guilt her. You will not tell her she owes you life for life. You will not dump your regret on her shoulders and call it love. You will tell her the truth. You will accept whatever she says the first time she says it. If you push, I will hang up, and I will never let you near her again. He swallowed. I understand. He said. I gave him the day and time. Come by my house on Sunday at 2, I said. We'll see if you're brave enough to knock on the door you walked away from. When I hung up, my hands were shaking. I had to sit down, onions forgotten on the cutting board, knife still on the counter. I called Grace. Baby, I said when she answered. There's something we need to talk about. About your father. There was a rustle on the other end. My biological father? She asked. That's what she called him, biological. What about him? Did he die? Not yet, I said. That's the problem. I told her everything. I told her about his illness, the transplant, the phone call. I told her what he wanted. I told her what I had told him. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She went very quiet, like she does when she's thinking hard. So he only remembers I exist when my blood might help him, she said finally. That's how it seems. I admitted. I'm not going to lie to you. I won't dress it up. But listen to me carefully, you don't owe him anything. Not your kidney. Not your time. Not your forgiveness. If you never want to see him, I will call him back and tell him that. This is your body. Your choice. She was quiet. Do you want me to say no? She asked softly. I froze. What I want doesn't matter, it does to me, she said. You raised me. He didn't. If I give him something, it's because you taught me how to be kind. Not because he earned it, those words. They broke something open in me the way his did. I become the man Dad was afraid I'd be? Later, what in the other story? Grace, I said, my voice shaking. I taught you to be kind. Not to be used, I know, she said. That's why I need to think. She called back the next day. I want to meet him, she said. Just meet. No hospital. No tests yet. I want to see his face when he has to look at me on Sunday. Marcus stood on my porch with his shoulders hunched like he was walking into a courtroom. He had aged. Gray in his hair. Lines around his mouth from frowning, or maybe from whatever stress he'd been carrying all these years. His eyes flicked to me, in a way like he wasn't sure he was allowed to really see me. Double quotes hello. Caroline, he said. Don't you hello me like we're old neighbors, I replied. She's in the living room. You remember where that is? He stepped inside like the house might swallow him. Grace was sitting on the couch, hands folded tightly in her lap. She had insisted on wearing her favorite yellow dress. She said she wanted to look like herself, not like a patient. When he saw her, he stopped walking. She looked like him around the eyes. I'd noticed it myself 1,000 times over the years, in the curve of her cheekbones, in the way her eyebrows lifted when she was confused. He saw it now for the first time. Grace. He breathed. She tilted her head. You're Marcus, she said. My biological father. He winced at the title. Yes, he said. I am. I don't deserve for you to call me anything else. He sat in the armchair across from her, hands shaking. For a moment, no one spoke. The clock ticked loud enough to be rude. I know why you're here, she said finally. Mom told me. Your kidneys are broken. You need a piece of somebody else's to keep living. He nodded slowly. That's true. And you want me to maybe give you that piece, she said. Because I'm your blood. He opened his mouth, then closed it. I want a chance to see if he'd be willing to get tested, he said. But more than that, I wanted to see you. To say, I'm sorry. Not just because I'm sick. Because I was a coward. I left you and your mother when you were hours old because I was afraid of a life that looked different than the one I imagined. I let my shame and my fear matter more than my daughter. He swallowed hard. You were never broken. He said. I was. Grace watched him, her gaze steady in a way that had made more than one teacher uncomfortable over the years. You know something? She said. I used to lie awake and wonder what was so wrong with me that you left. I thought maybe if I walked faster, talked clearer, did better at school, you'd magically come back. I built whole stories in my head about why you were gone. Secret agent. Lost at sea. Memory loss. I wish any of those were true. He whispered. I don't, she said. Because then it would mean my father was taken from me. The truth is worse. You weren't taken. You walked. He nodded slowly, tears shining in his eyes. You're right, he said. I walked, and I missed everything. Your first steps, your angry little face when you hate a math worksheet, your graduation. All of it, that's on me. Not on you. She sat back. You know what's funny? She said, the doctor told you I might never live on my own. But I do. I share an apartment. I have a job. I cook spaghetti. I ride the bus. People stare sometimes, but I'm used to it. I have a life. I'm glad, he said hoarsely. You deserve that. You deserve so much more. You're right, she replied. I did. But I got a lot anyway. I got Mom. I got Aunt Denise. I got friends. I got a director who lets me play a tree and a villager, and a shopkeeper in the same play. Because I'm that good at pretending. She took a breath. So here's what I decided, she said. I will get tested. My head snapped toward her. Grace, she held up a hand. I didn't say I'd give him anything, she said. I said I'll get tested. Not because I owe you, she added, looking at Marcus, but because I want to know if I can help another human being stay alive. You're not just my father. You're a man who made bad choices, and now your body is punishing you. I don't forgive what you did. But I don't want to be the reason you die either. Marcus covered his face. His shoulders shook. I don't deserve your kindness, he said. You don't, she agreed. But I'm not doing this because you deserve it. I'm doing it because Mom raised me to be better than what was done to us. She looked at me then. And I don't know how I stayed in my chair instead of collapsing. There were tests, blood draws, consultations, the kind of medical whirlwind I lived through with her as a baby, but focused in a different direction. In the end, she wasn't a match, they told us in a room that smelled like coffee and fear. The doctor used phrases like incompatible antigens and unacceptable risk. Grace listened quietly, so my kidney wouldn't work in his body, she said when he was done. That's correct, the doctor said. He'll stay on the list. We'll keep looking. On the drive home, she was quiet. Marcus rode with us. His wife had stayed at the hospital. I'm sorry, he said suddenly. For what? She asked. Not dying. For letting the hope be on you, he said. For looking at you and seeing a solution instead of a person. She stared out the window. I'm not sorry, she said after a while. You're not? He asked. No, she said. Because now I know. I know my body couldn't help you. And I know I was willing to try. That matters to me. I'm not carrying your life on my shoulders anymore. I'm carrying my own. He swallowed. Can I? Can I still call you? He asked carefully, even if you can't save my life? She thought about it. You can call, she said. Sometimes. You can come to my play next month if you want. I'm villager number 3. I have one line. He laughed, a broken sound. I would like that, he said. Good, she replied. Because if you don't show up, I will block your number and tell everyone you got eaten by a shark. He blinked. Then, to my surprise, he smiled. That sounds fair, he said. He did show up. He sat 3 rows back, hands clenched in his lap, leaning forward like the whole world depended on a community theater production with folding chairs and a sticky floor. When Grace stepped on stage, his face went soft in a way I hadn't seen since we were kids. After the show, he hugged her in the lobby. You were amazing, he said. I was on stage for 2 minutes. She laughed, and I could have watched you for 2 hours, he replied. I stood to the side, watching them. We never remarried. We never even dated again. Too much water under too many bridges. There were boundaries that would never disappear. There were years that could never be returned, but something shifted. He started coming around, not as a husband or even as a father in the way people like to imagine, but as a man trying to show up late for the job he'd abandoned. He went to doctor's appointments with her sometimes. He called to ask about her work. He learned to listen when she corrected his language. Not Down's kid. Dad, I'm a woman with Down syndrome, and he changed one night. Long after he'd started dialysis, we sat on my porch watching the sky turn purple. He looked thinner, tired, but there was a peace in his face I hadn't seen before. I used to think disability meant a life half-lived, he said quietly, like it was a tragedy someone had to carry. I thought leaving was mercy. Mercy for me. It was cowardice, I said. He nodded. Yes, it was, he admitted. And then I spent 20 years living a life that looked perfect from the outside, and felt hollow inside because a part of it was missing, and I pretended not to know. Why? He looked at me. I'm not asking for credit, he said. I know I don't get a gold star for finally being a decent human being. But, thank you for not teaching her to hate me so much that she'd spit in my face when I knocked on the door. I shook my head. I didn't do that for you, I said. I did it for her. Hatred is heavy. She already has enough to carry just being a woman in this world. I wasn't going to make her drag your ghost around too. He smiled faintly. Either way, he said. I'm grateful. He died 3 years later. No miracle transplant. No dramatic last-minute save. Just a slow decline, nurses who knew our faces by name, and a funeral with more people than I expected. Grace spoke of the service. She stood at the podium in a blue dress, hands trembling slightly, and said, My dad didn't show up at the beginning of my life, but he showed up at the end, and I'm glad I met the man he became, not just the man he was afterward. Someone came up to me in the hallway and said, I'm so sorry your daughter had to grow up with a disability. That must have been so hard. I looked at Grace across the room, laughing with one of the nurses. Her whole face lit from the inside. She didn't grow up with a disability, I said. She grew up with a mother who stayed and a father who left and then came back too late. Same as a lot of kids, just with different labels. I went home that night to my quiet house. There are moments when I sit alone and wonder how different things might have been. If Marcus had chosen us from the start. If we had faced the fear together instead of on opposite sides of a slammed door. But then I think about the woman my daughter became. Strong, funny, fierce about her worth. The kind of person who can say, I'll get tested, to a man who once called her life a burden. And then walk away with her head high when the test says no. She was never broken. The only broken thing in this story was the love someone was too afraid to hold on to. So if you're listening to this thinking about a child in your life who didn't come out perfect, or a parent in your life who walked away when things got hard, hear this: you don't get to decide someone's value by how close they are to the picture in your head. You don't have to give away pieces of yourself to people who only remember your name when they need saving, and you are allowed, at any age and anybody with any diagnosis, to say, I am not your burden. I am not your spare part. I am not broken. You're just a person trying to live that same as the rest of us.